I love this show. It's the heartwarming romance between a complete moron and a Paris. Okay, so I generally don't review comedy shows because comedy is really subjective, and that makes it really, really hard to put a quote-unquote objective review out. Not that any reviews are ever objective, because goddammit they're not, deal with it. But anyway, Monthly Girls Nozaki-Kun is a story of Chio Sakura, age 16. She's got a crush on the tall, dark, handsome Umetaro Nozaki. And why wouldn't she? I mean, some chicks dig the strong, silent type. The problem is that she's got the same problem that everybody has in these types of shows, in that she can't say how she really feels because she's too shy and blah, 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 blah. However, there's a roadblock that she never expected. When she confesses her little Paris feelings, Nozaki fails to read the situation correctly and gives her an autograph. You see, Nozaki is secretly, and I mean really secretly, a mangaka, and a particularly good one too. Why doesn't he let on about it? Probably because it's the most contrived and typical manga in the universe, but also because it's a girls' manga.
You can't tell anyone because it's for girls, and you're a dude, man!
I'm exaggerating, of course. He actually did tell everybody, and nobody believed him. I mean, the guy is 6'3" and looks like a yakuza. It's not exactly shocking that everyone took one look at him and said, no. Since Chio has made the critical error of calling her his fan rather than saying bang me like a screen door in a storm, Nozaki figures she's in on the secret and gives her an autograph instead of them digits. But hey, after that, she gets invited to come back to his place for the evening. Well, so much for that. Thanks to this basic misunderstanding, the show is on the road, because now Chio ends up wrapped up in his manga shenanigans. Lucky for her, she's in the art club, so now she gets to spend time with Nozaki and, well, find out how peculiar he is. And really, by the end of this show, I'm kind of questioning how Chio is still head over heels over this goon anyway. The guy has about as much personality as a statue, and roughly about as much sense as well. However, while this would be a foible in the typical romantic show, this is actually a romantic comedy, so it works out just fine. Congratulations, Nozaki-kun, your show has a built-in roadblock. There's a running theme in this series about people not being able to express their feelings for each other, even though it seems obvious to basically everyone else. And the main relationship is pretty much the best example of this. If you like a good deconstruction, you're in for a treat with this puppy. Every character has their own sort of spin on what you'd expect, and it's pretty clear from the get-go what they're supposed to represent. For every character archetype in a shoujo manga, you'll see the gender-swapped version of it right here, and the show feels like it naturally extends the comedy from that very basic point. For example, the next character we end up meeting is the handsome, charming, and slightly stuffed-up Mikoshiba. I can't speak for the Japanese performance because God knows I don't know the language well enough, but I do know that in the dub his slightly nasal performance adds a tone of ridiculousness to the character, who could easily come off as just kind of sleazy. He's at once flirtatious and utterly shy, easily flustered, and frankly on autopilot when he flirts with women, and then when he realizes what he just did, he has to deal with the massive social embarrassment therein. And while you might think that his flirtatious personality and smoothish moves would land him as the main character in a romance manga, he ends up being the inspiration for Mamiko, the heroine. Oh, Mikorin, you are best girl, and good job waiting for your Suzuki. Mikoshiba doesn't have a character that he ends up with, and it's probably for the best, because otherwise it might send Chio into fits.
You're a cheater, Mikami!
Obliviousness is kind of a running theme of this show, and there are a few characters who are oblivious as Yuzuki Seo, who may actually be Satan. You don't see girl characters portrayed like Seo very often, unless they're the mean girl in a story arc of a girls' manga, but she's kind of got a Ron Kotobuki sort of sensibility to her. If Ron was less of a hero and maybe more of a war machine. But in spite of all this, she has a beautiful singing voice, which is probably because God wanted to make sure she had at least one redeeming quality. This becomes a focal point later on for Wakamatsu, a first year on the basketball team who's been rather victimized by Seo's antics. Not knowing that he's actually listening to Seo's singing and that Seo is doing her level best to get all up in that, he falls in love accidentally with the quote-unquote Lorelei of the Glee Club.
That's so sweet. She has no idea she's talking to the guy she hates. I wonder what she's gonna do when she figures it out.
I am going to make sure that does not happen.
Waka in this case is an object lesson on how not to use shoujo manga, as his misguided attempts lead on to more confusion. Face it, buddy, you're fucked. In spite of that, it seems like Seo is quite fond of Wakamatsu, but there's only so many episodes in the show to develop that relationship. The next pairing is one that I have a special fondness for because I think it's probably the best developed in the series, and also because I think one of the characters involved is the bestest ever. Masayuki Hori is the head of the drama club, and in spite of being a skilled actor, is perhaps the instrument of his own downfall. The first problem is that he's actually too good of an actor to be a side character, but because he's only 5'4", he's not really suited to be a leading man. He primarily works behind the scenes because no amount of lifts in your shoes will fix being short. He's the boss though, no doubt about it. He has a strong work ethic and expects the best from his actors, which brings him up against his particular roadblock. A 5'9" roadblock with short blue hair and a princely demeanor. Everyone loves Yu Kashima. If she was a boy, she'd be played by Mamoru Miyano, because she is the prince archetype to a T. All the girls want her, and all the boys want to be her. Except Hori, who didn't realize she was a lady until after she had entered the school. She's tall, and while she's not exactly masculine, she's not extremely feminine either, and most of her street clothes are pretty male-coded, at least compared to her other classmates. And you know, while I don't feel qualified to make this call myself, I wouldn't say it's out of the ballpark that she might actually be transgendered. Setting all that conjecture aside, Kashima is precisely the character you imagine her to be. She's flirtatious, she's a great athlete, and a great actress as well. While Mikoshiba gets embarrassed when he does his flirty derpy thing, Kashima does it without a second thought. And she seems pretty comfortable being surrounded by the ladies. To the point where it's a well-known fact that Kashima will steal your women's. Unfortunately, she's also a huge flake, and Hori has to come by and drag her skinny butt to the drama club, usually fairly violently.
Squaring up on the pitch is Masayuki Hori. And that is a good hit, but I worry he may have touched the butthole in that one. Let's see that on instant replay, and yes, it looks like there has been a foul called on the play.
Foul, butthole kicking, -5 yards, resume play.
So that one went right up her ass, didn't it? Clearly they're meant for each other. Seriously though, I think what I like most about Hori and Kashima's relationship is that it feels natural. It feels like two people getting to know each other and then slowly developing feelings for each other and, going from there. But this may sound silly, but I don't actually know what it is about Kashima that I like so much. Son of a bitch, I have a type. All of that aside, the dub is something that I actually feel the need to bring up here. It's done by Sentai Filmworks, and for once this company has actually impressed me. I cut my teeth on old ADV dubs when I was first getting into anime, and they usually had a level of acting and writing that made the performances stand out, adding little things to dialogue to further add to the characters. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it helped to solidify the characters in my mind, like Akito Tenkawa and Yurika Misimaru from Nadesco, for example. I've been watching subs a lot more in recent years, and after a while, you start to pick up on patterns of statements and reactions that feel kind of standardized in a different language. And it seems like a lot of dubs these days are being very careful about how much extra personality they inject into their characters, if a show gets a dub at all. Sometimes they do it right, sometimes they do it poorly, and when they do it poorly, you get Endless Summer. But let's be real reasonable here. Nobody fucking cares what those kids are talking about. With the dub of Nozaki-Kun, which was made up of relatively new actors, it really feels fresh and like the actors had some more to work with than just basic reactions that we've come to expect. Everyone has a voice that suits the characters, and I'll probably never listen to this show subbed again if I'm 100% honest. And for a show about making manga that's kind of predicated on knowing the tropes and the jokes, it's surprisingly accessible. For example, the episode about Tanuki has an explanation built into it about what a Tanuki is. Chio starts by saying raccoon bear, which is fairly accurate, and then follows it up by saying Tanuki, which connects the statements together both in the script and in the viewer's mind. we can now make the inference that a tanuki is referring to this weird raccoon bear critter that keeps popping up, even if we don't have the entire gigantic bald story. This is critical for people who may be watching this who are new to the medium and may not be getting all the inside baseball, to turn a phrase. The casting is all spot on, from Juliet Simmons and Tai Mahani as Chiyo and Nozaki, to Monica Rial as Kashima, who may or may not have been the entire reason I wanted to buy this in the first place, to the inclusion of veteran Chris Patton as the voice of Suzuki from the manga. The dub is about as good of one as I've seen come out in a long time, and really, I think you're missing out if you don't go check it out. Luckily for those of us here in the States, we get to have just a little bit extra Nozaki after the show is finished, as they picked up the OVA as well. And it has a beach episode. As disappointing as that was, I'm still glad they managed to snap up both the series and the OVA. But I'll be honest here, it still doesn't feel like enough. The great tragedy to this is that there isn't really a resolution to the whole thing. It's not surprising, it's only 12 episodes long, but it does leave a kind of weird feeling to the whole shebang. Of course, I might be biased because I just want more of this, but it does feel more than a little truncated by the only semi-satisfying ending. No one really makes the hookups, nobody really confesses anything, and so, at the end, there's not a sense of closure for any of these characters. Somehow, Nozaki-Kun is sitting in the berserk pile for me right now, and god damn it do I hate when that happens. This is the risk when you go adapting comedy manga that's still ongoing, of course, and I would love for them to come back to it in a year or so when they have more material, but it hurts. In spite of all that, it's still worth a watch and definitely worth a pickup if you like this sort of show. Again, it's hard to really say for sure if you out there will like it because it's a comedy, but it's a comedy that's without malice, and it's the kind of thing that you can show your non-otaku friends and get a chuckle out of. Find it, watch it, buy it, love it.